Welcome to History, Mystery, and the Unexplained, the show where we explore everything from true crime to cryptids, the paranormal, and beyond. Often, when it comes to murder investigations, the mystery is whodunit. But there are times in history where the mystery starts with identifying the victim. Today, we're going to look at legendary unsolved mysteries that were finally solved after decades. But before we get started, please like, subscribe, follow, or whatever on the platform of your choice. And be sure to give us a review. I'd love to hear what you think. The Somerton Man was a mystery that plagued Australia for decades. On December 1st, 1948, a man was found on Somerton Beach in South Australia. He was sitting in the sand with his back resting against the seawall. It appeared as if he'd fallen asleep and never woke up. He wore an American-made suit. In his pockets was a bus ticket, an unused train ticket, a narrow aluminum comb, a half a pack of juicy fruit gum, a pack of Army Club cigarettes with 6 Consitas brand cigarettes inside, a Scottish brand, and finally a quarter-full pack of matches from Brandt and May. There wasn't much to go on. The autopsy suggested that he may have been poisoned, and a small slip of paper was found in his pocket that said, "Taman, shut. It is finished." This scrap of paper had been torn from the pages of a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. A public announcement was made that they were looking for the book, and a man came forward with it. He found it in the backseat of his unlocked car. Someone had put it there. In the book, there was a phone number, the name Justin, and a series of capital letters, which appeared to be some kind of code. They also found a suitcase at the Adeline railway station that was believed to have belonged to the Somerton Man. It, too, was not much to go on. It contained shirts, all of which had the tags removed, scissors, pencils, a knife, envelopes, a stencil, a glass dish, and a few personal items. One of the shirts in the laundry bag contained the words "Keen." Immediately, police called the number and tracked down Justin. She insisted she didn't know who the man was, but when they showed her a mask of his face, she looked away and was so taken aback that she almost fainted. Various sources list her as Jessica Thompson, Jessica Harkness, Jessica Johnson, or Teresa Powell. She said that she had given a copy of the Rubaiyat to a man named Alfred Boxall in August of 1947 over drinks at the Clifton Garden Hotel, a year before the Somerton Man was found. She also said that she lived with her husband, Prosper Thompson. This last fact was not entirely true. Prosper was still married to another woman and wouldn't marry Jessica for another 2 years until after Prosper's divorce was finalized. A man named Kenneth Manganson claimed he recognized the Somerton Man, identifying him as Carl Thompson, his former co-worker. In June of 1949, he was found unconscious on the coast 12 miles north of Somerton. Allegedly, his wife was approached by a man who threatened her to stay away from the police, or there would be consequences. A local businessman and the mayor also received threatening phone calls. These were assumed to be pranks and weren't taken seriously. In 1945, 3 years before the Somerton Man was found, the body of Joseph Marshall was found dead in Ashton Park with a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam on his chest. It was a 7th edition copy. Only 5 editions were ever released to the public, so it's unknown how Joseph got the copy. Ashton Park is next door to Clifton Gardens, where the copy was given to Alfred Boxall. He was determined to have died from self-poisoning. A woman named Gwyneth Graham came forward to testify, but she too was found dead just 13 days later. In 2013, Kate Thompson went to the police asking for the Somerton Man to be exhumed. She was the daughter of Jessica Thompson, aka Justin. She claimed that her mother did in fact know the Somerton Man, and that her half-brother was his son. She also said that her mother was a communist sympathizer. So, who was the Somerton Man? A communist? A spy? Some kind of criminal mastermind? Unfortunately, DNA analysis shows another story. He was Charles Webb, an electrical engineer, a loner, by most accounts, an alcoholic, possibly abusive, depending on the report. He was in South Australia looking for his ex-wife. Most likely, his death was the result of a heart attack brought on by heavy drinking. Oh. And the cryptic messages and the capital letters? He loved betting on horses. It's a sad ending to a great mystery that would make Dan Brown proud. In 1985, a group of kids was playing at Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire, when they found a large barrel. They decided to play with it, knocking it over and rolling it down the hill. When the lid came off, the container emitted a foul stench, and the kids decided not to look inside. Later, a hunter found himself in the same area of the state park and came across the barrel. Inside were two bodies, one of a woman in her 20s, the other of a 7-year-old girl. Both suffered signs of blunt force trauma. Given the amount of decomposition, it was assumed that they were murdered sometime between 1978 and 1981. The problem was that no one knew who they were or where they came from. The police canvassed the neighborhood, and no one saw anything. 15 years passed with no viable leads. A new detective took over the case and decided to go to the state park to look around. He found a second barrel just outside the original search area. Inside were two more bodies, one of a 2 to 4-year-old girl, the other an 11-month-old. They died in the same fashion and around the same time as the previous victims. In 1985, a man named Curtis Kimball was arrested for driving under the influence and endangering the life of a child. In the car with him was a young girl called Lisa. Kimball failed to appear in court, and he changed his name to Gordon Jensen and abandoned Lisa in an RV park in Scotts Valley, California. In 1989, he was picked up again driving a stolen vehicle. He was going by the name of Jerry Mockerman. Fingerprint analysis linked him to the previous aliases, and he was sentenced to 3 years for child abandonment. He only served one. The child was not his. Lisa was the child of Denise Bowden, a woman who was last seen with her boyfriend, Bob Evans, and her daughter on Thanksgiving of 1981. Bob was yet another alias of the chameleon killer, a man whose real name was Terry Rasmussen. In 1999, chemist Unsolved introduced her family to her new boyfriend, Larry Vanner. The two married in 2001. In June of 2002, Unsoon's family reported her missing. An investigation was launched, and the police visited Larry Vanner at his home. Larry refused to allow the police to speak to her. But it didn't take long for them to realize that Larry Vanner was, in fact, Terry Rasmussen, a man wanted for parole violations. Well, searching Rasmussen's home, they found a large pile of kitty litter in the garage. Under the kitty litter was the dismembered body of Unsolved. Rasmussen pled guilty and went to jail for 15 years to life. In 2003, he passed away on December 28th, 2010, while incarcerated. So what does this have to do with the bodies found at Bear Brook State Park? DNA analysis done in 2019 found that 3 of the bodies were related. Marlise Elizabeth Honeychurch was the mother of 7-year-old Marie Elizabeth Vaughn and 11-month-old Sarah Lynn McWaters. The remaining child was the biological daughter of Terry Rasmussen. Given the connection, it is assumed that all were victims of Rasmussen, as was Denise Bowden, whose body has never been found. In February of 1957, a man was checking his rabbit and weasel traps in the woods off Susquehanna Road in Fox Chase neighborhood of Philadelphia when he came across a deceased child in a box. Afraid that the police would confiscate his traps, he chose not to come forward. Days later, a 26-year-old college student saw a rabbit run across the road into the underbrush. Knowing there were traps in the area, he followed the rabbit into the woods. At least, that's a story he gives the newspapers. It is suggested that he may have actually been in the area to spy on the students of the nearby all-girls school. Regardless, he too saw a boy in a box. Initially, he chose not to come forward either, thinking that it was a large doll. But when he heard a report about a missing child named Mary Jane Barker, he made the decision to go to the police. The body was not Mary Jane Barker. It was that of a malnourished 4-year-old boy that bore signs of physical abuse. He was wrapped in a blanket and had been cut into 3 pieces and placed in a bassinet box from a JCPenney's department store. It was also noted that the child had surgical scarring on his ankle and groin and an L-shaped scar under his chin. The child had been cleaned and his hair was crudely but freshly cut. Strands of hair were still found on the body. 270 police recruits from the academy came out to scour the area for clues. They discovered a men's blue corduroy cap, a child's scarf, and a white handkerchief with the letter G in one of the corners. Initially, the police were optimistic that they would be able to quickly learn who the child was and find his killer. Fingerprints and footprints led nowhere. The best leads they had were the JCPenney box, the blanket, and the hat. Unfortunately, none contained any fingerprints. The store that sold the bassinet said that they had sold about 12 of them. They, however, had no record of who they sold them to. Being the 1950s, credit cards weren't common. And unlike today, stores weren't in the practice of taking down customer information for marketing purposes. The news about the bassinet was released to the public, and 8 of the 12 individuals came forward to show that they still either had their boxes or that they had long since thrown them away. The hat, likewise, led to a dead end. It had a label that it was from Robbins Bald Eagle Hat and Cap Company. Police went there and talked to the owner, Miss Hannah Robbins, and she recognized the hat and said that she had made about a dozen of them before May of 1956. What was unique about this one that the police had found was that it had a leather strap. Only one cap that she made had a leather strap, and the man who purchased it asked to have it customized. She described him as a blonde man in his late 20s wearing a worker's clothes with no foreign accent. Like the JCPenney's customers, however, the man paid cash and no details of his identity were taken down. 400,000 flyers were made with a picture of the boy, and they were distributed all throughout Philadelphia. They even sent flyers with the gas bill in the hopes that someone would recognize the child. The boy remained in the morgue for months to allow people to come forward and view the body in an attempt to identify it. Many people did, and time and time again, it was proven just to be false leads. Several people from Camden, New Jersey identified the child as the son of Charles Speece. He was not. In another instance, a Marine came forward saying that it was one of his 17 brothers. His brother was found alive living in California. Still another group identified him as Stephen Dahman, a child who had been abducted from Long Island, New York in 1955. This theory was due largely in part to the fact that Steve Dahman, like the boy in the box, had an L-shaped scar under his chin. This lead, too, turned out to be false. After months without answers, they finally had to bury the child. He was buried in a potter's field. It was the only grave there to be given a tombstone. It read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." Investigations, of course, continued, with many officers over the years taking the case extremely personally. And before we get into the boy's true identity, I'd like to cover a few of the top theories. The first theory was that it was the child of a foster home on Morden Road, about a mile and a half from where the boy was found. This was the home of Arthur and Catherine Nicoletti, and Catherine's daughter from a previous marriage, Anna Marie Nagel. Anna was 20 at the time of the initial investigation. She had had 4 children out of wedlock. 3 of them were stillborn, and the 4th tragically electrocuted by a nickel ride outside a grocery store. They were regularly have between 4 and 25 children in their care at any given time. Police talked to the Nicoletti family and determined that all their children were accounted for, and they were not the killers. In 1960, however, an investigator from the medical examiner's office, Remington Bristow, spoke with a psychic named Florence Sternfeld. She claimed to be able to identify people by holding a metal object that was somehow connected to them. Remington took 2 staples from the JCPenney box that the child was found in and brought them to Florence in Palisades Park, New Jersey. Immediately, she said that he needed to look for a stone house with a wooden railing and a log cabin on the property. She said that there would be children playing in the log cabin. Bristow searched everywhere in the Fox Chase area for the house Sternfeld described and found the Nicoletti foster home matched perfectly. It was stone with a wooden railing and had a log cabin out back. The children in Nicoletti's care would summer in the cabin. When he went there, he found the Nicolettis were getting out of the foster business and moving away. The home was for sale, and they were having an estate sale with many of their possessions. Among them was a bassinet that matched the description of one of the ones from JCPenney, and blankets similar to the one the child was wrapped in. These blankets, too, were cut just like the one from the crime scene. It was explained that this was for them to better fit the cots in the cabin. Bristow was convinced that the boy in the box was the illegitimate child of Anna Marie Nagel. When Arthur Nicoletti married his own stepdaughter, Bristow used this to reinforce his theory. Detective Tom Augustus interviewed Arthur Nicoletti again in 1998 and determined that they were not involved in the crime. Another lead came in 1961 when Kenneth and Irene Dudley, were 2 traveling carnival workers, were arrested in Lawrenceville, Virginia, after their 7-year-old daughter died of malnutrition and neglect. Under questioning, it was revealed that 6 of their 10 children had expired in a similar fashion. Their bodies were dumped in various locations throughout their travels. The boy in the box, however, was not one of them. In 2002, a woman identified only as M, or in some cases Martha, came forward to say that her mother had purchased a child named Jonathan. The child was raised in squalor in the basement of their home in Lower Merion, Pennsylvania. He slept in a refrigerator box amid dusty coal bins and used a floor drain as a toilet. When the child died, she claimed that they cut his long hair and trimmed his nails. She and her mother then wrapped Jonathan in a blanket and placed him in the trunk of their car, looking for a place to dump the body. When they came to the woods in Fox Chase, they pulled over and a man stopped his car and asked if they needed help. They ignored him until he went away. This matched a witness description, seeing a woman and a child standing by their car. An extensive search of the statements made by M turned up with nothing, and it's highly plausible that she made up her whole story. So, who is the boy in the box? Well, DNA analysis revealed that his name is Joseph Augustus Zarelli, the son of Augustus John Zarelli, or Gus, and Mary Elizabeth Plunkett, known commonly as Betsy. Now, before you go hating on the Zarelli family, which many have, Gus may not have even known that Joseph was born, and Betsy put him up for adoption. Who raised Joseph and how he came to find himself in the woods in Fox Chase is still a mystery. In 1998, he was moved from the Potter's Field, where he was originally buried, to Ivy Hill Cemetery with a headstone reading America's Unknown Child. On January 13th, 2023, Joseph's 70th birthday, the headstone was updated with his full name and image. That's it for today, folks. Till next time, I'm Christopher Damian. This is History, Mystery, and the Unexplained. And thank you for listening.